We are back on Taking Care of Business on Current Radio, News Talk, 1180, 1230 KGEO, 1410 KERI, 1000 KKIM in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and 3 times a week on the Internet on knookmedia.com. Our guest by phone, a friend of the program, Rob West, the author of The Thin Wall, and a gentleman who is very involved in the POW movement. So, Rob, one thing you and I wanted to talk about today is Benghazi. Incredible story. Who do you think is ultimately responsible? And do we know anything more now than we did a couple years ago?
Well, I think ultimately the Obama administration is responsible for this. I look back to when this first came about, and it was very clear within a month or two to people that they were lying about what had happened. They attempted to divert with this whole story of a video. So, yeah, I think that's the buck stops there. The cover-up that is continuing over the past couple years is just a good example of how the government can cover up. And you could easily imagine something like this happening during the 70s and 80s when there wasn't even the Internet, where the government could orchestrate sort of misleading lies and diversions to make people believe that all the POWs did come home, nobody had been left behind, and there was nobody there, basically to save their butts and embarrassment, and for many to save their legacies. Because I think there were many people in Washington who knew they were still there, and just kept silent because possibly it could have come back to them to show that they knew it all along, that they were alive and did nothing about it.
Well, when you've got generals coming out now saying that, they were sitting there on alert, ready to go, waiting for the orders to go get them, and those orders were never given, that's got to look bad for the administration. Yeah,
it does. I find it odd that they suddenly are able to pick up one of the terrorists who was involved in that during a time when a lot of other little mini crises were going on to sort of divert attention again. I think they could have, sorry, his name's slipping my mind, but I think they could have picked him up a long time ago. I mean, he was interviewed by the AP, and pretty much everybody knew more or less where he was.
Yeah.
It's just interesting, when it's convenient to divert attention to that sort of thing, that the government can step in and make something happen.
Yeah, it's funny. The only way I remember his name, and my producer's reminding me, is, his name is Ahmed, which reminds me of Dunham's character, Ahmed the Dead Terrorist. Okay. And same name. And, Ahmed was giving interviews, in a cafe in Benghazi 2 weeks after the thing occurred. So, picking him up wasn't a big deal. It was something they could have done, like you say, at any time. They just decided to do it when it was politically expedient for them because they needed some cover, and he gave it to them.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is crazy. Looking at this, I can't help but think that Hillary Clinton is ultimately responsible because, after all, she's Secretary of State. She's the one who ultimately has that responsibility under the president. And she made a big deal during the campaign about who would you rather have answer the phone at 3 o'clock. Well, apparently she must have put that call on snooze because she didn't answer it.
Exactly. And I was thinking about this morning. The government right now, particularly Republicans, are looking to bring the truth out and expose this for basically a crime. But if she gets elected, and there's a high possibility that Hillary Clinton could be elected, and she could serve 8 years, that would be enough time to sort of hide all the evidence, to bury this thing so that the truth never comes out.
Yeah. Well, I've yet to hear a straight answer as far as where she was and what she did and didn't do. I haven't heard anyone, and I've listened to a couple of the interviews. I've read some of the excerpts from the book. I don't see a straight answer here.
No, I haven't either.
Yeah, and I don't think we're going to get one. And I don't think we know any more now than we did 2 years ago because they're doing such a good job of hiding this, other than the generals coming out saying, we were sitting there waiting. And this is a question of not leaving anybody behind. It truly is because, American special forces would have gone in and grabbed him, with no hesitation at all, or at least tried to. I tell you, I can remember, Rob, it's got to be about 1974, 75, a bunch of us sitting in a room, all of us veterans. Some of the guys there were combat, some veterans. Some of us, including myself, were not. But we all had varying opinions about Vietnam. But the one thing we all agreed on at the time, the big event was the Mayaguez incident, where the ship had been taken, I think it was by the Cambodians. And to a man, we all agreed that we would go back in just to get those men out of there and get that ship out of there. Regardless of how we felt about Vietnam, just the idea of American soldiers being in harm's way like that, we would have gone and not hesitated and risked our lives for that. And I think that's the same feeling the military had in regards to Benghazi, but they were never allowed the chance to go get them.
Exactly. Yeah, I think this whole thing could have been avoided. I still don't understand why, and I hear rumors about the CIA being involved, selling guns to Syria and that sort of thing. But boy, I don't know. This is when the truth does finally come out, and I really hope it does. This is really going to be one of the biggest scars on recent American history that I can think of.
Yeah, I totally agree. Rob, one thing I want to talk about, we got about 2 minutes left. We just have a couple of short segments. I want to talk about your book for a minute. So tell our listeners about The Thin Wall, those that may not have heard about it.
Well, The Thin Wall takes place in 1968 during the Soviet occupation of Czechoslovakia, and it's sort of a multi-layered story that addresses the question that were American prisoners taken from Vietnam and sent to the Soviet Union. At the same time, tells the story of a small village and people who are living under communist tyranny. I think it's kind of timely in a way when you, I know we don't have time to get into this discussion, but when you look at what's happening in the Ukraine and the Soviet invasion there, a lot of parallels between that and Czechoslovakia. At the same time, with the whole Boberg release and the question of American servicemen in Vietnam and leaving no man behind. And I think it's pretty relevant, and people would find it interesting.
Yeah, highly relevant. I highly recommend it. So, Rob, again, thank you for coming on for a couple of short segments. I highly, highly recommend the book, The Thin Wall. We've got about 4 minutes left, but I want to end this, since it is the Independence Day weekend, I want to end this with a segment that we've played before. It's Red Skelton and his definition of the Pledge of Allegiance. I think it's very appropriate, considering the fact that we're looking at the July 4th weekend.
I've been listening to you boys and girls recite the Pledge of Allegiance all semester, and it seems as though it's becoming monotonous to you. If I may I recite it and try to explain to you the meaning of each word. I, me, an individual, a committee of one, pledge, dedicate all of my worldly goods to give without self-pity, allegiance, my love and my devotion, to the flag, our standard, Old Glory, a symbol of freedom. Wherever she waves, there's respect, because your loyalty has given her a dignity that shouts freedom is everybody's job. United, that means that we have all come together. States, individual communities that have united into 48 great states. 48 individual communities with pride and dignity and purpose. All divided with imaginary boundaries, yet united to a common purpose. And that's love for country. And to the Republic, a state in which sovereign power is invested in representatives chosen by the people to govern. And government is the people, and it's from the people to the leaders, not from the leaders to the people, for which it stands. One nation, meaning so blessed by God, indivisible, incapable of being divided, with liberty, which is freedom, the right of power to live one's own life without threats, fear, or some sort of retaliation. And justice, the principle or qualities of dealing fairly with others. For all. which means, boys and girls, it's as much your country as it is mine. And now, boys and girls, let me hear you recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since I was a small boy, 2 states have been added to our country, and 2 words have been added to the Pledge of Allegiance: under God. Wouldn't it be a pity if someone said that is a prayer and that would be eliminated from schools too?
We will see you in 167 hours on Taking Care of Business. And again, happy July 4th weekend to one and all.